to find out what we call the driving forces. What is a driving force? Tu peux mettre le titre en bas, juste après. Voilà. A driving force is a factor of change. I said an internal factor of change because we have worked on internal factors. It's a factor of change which has the greatest direct influence in the system, but also that the lowest, it's not the least, it's the lowest dependence in this system. That means that it's a factor that will influence a lot of other factors, and that will influence by a few number of other factors. You remember we said each factor has now two coordinates, one which is the total number of influence and also the total number of times where it has been influenced by another factor. So, having coordinates, we can display a graph where here we have the influence, okay, and here we have the dependence. And this graph here separates, we can make a difference between four different situations. Why do we call these drivers, according to you? Why we call these drivers or driving forces? Why?
It have a high influence.
Yeah, it has a high influence, but not only that. It has a high influence, so this is why it is up here. But it's also to the left, so it's a low dependence. It's like, if you are in a car and you are the one who drives the car, you are the driver because you are taking all the others with you, and if you want to go there, whatever the other says, if you want to go there, you go there. You are the driver. You are the driving force. Okay? Now, why do we call this the levers or leverage? Because they have a high influence, but also they are depending on many other factors. Okay, so the drivers will take you in a specific direction. The levers are influenced by the drivers, but at the same time, they are influencing many other factors. So somehow they help you. It's like you are driving, and the co-pilot sits beside you, and the co-pilot convinces the people in the back that it is the right direction, the direction that the driver is taking, because the co-pilot is the spouse of the pilot, and the spouse of the pilot does always what the pilot says. So we go there. So the levers are pushing in the direction that is set by the driver. Okay, so it helps pushing in that direction. Now, why we call these outputs? Sometimes we call this also product. Product. Why? Uh-oh, you were much more active when you were working in groups. Now you are again looking at me, and maybe I should ask Raphael to come here so that you answer to her and not to me. Why?
Because it have a lower influence but have a high dependence, so
yes.
it means the
So
outputs.
exactly. So this is the product of all what is happening here. They are influenced by the drivers and the levers, but being here, they are not influencing very much the others. So they are depending on, they are the products, they are the results of all these things. Now, this one, why do we call them singular? Singular or autonomous, something like that. Yeah, because it seems that they are disconnected. Low influence, low dependence. So somehow they are aside. Okay. Now, this is not because they are aside that they are not important. It means only that if I want to change the future of labor, what shall I do? Where should I start? If I want, what kind of factor I should master, I should control if I want to change the future of labor? What are the factors? Where should I start? Drivers.
The driving forces.
I should start here. If I control these ones, I have a lot of power. I can move the whole things in the direction I want. Now, if I control them and if I can make sure that at the same time my control goes a bit with the levers, I'm even stronger. Okay? So it means that if I want to transform the system, I could always work on the outputs. But if I'm not aware about what is going here, then even if I try to improve, for example, the skills of the tappers, if I don't do anything else on the factors that have an influence on the skills of the tappers, maybe I can do something, but after that, what happens here in the drivers and the levers, maybe will change completely the results. I have an example for you. I work in a country where people were worried about tree cutting in an island. And they say, well, we have to stop cutting trees. So they said, let's have policy, let's have people controlling the cutting of the trees. We did this kind of analysis. And controlling, individual control of the tree, the security of him here. So it means that, okay, you can put policemen behind each tree, but once you don't have them anymore, it will go back to the former situation. And what we did see in that case, it was more the income, the opportunities of other income. People cut trees because they were poor. So here the level of poverty of people was a driving force, explaining why people were cutting trees. So as long as you put policemen behind the trees, they don't cut the trees. But you do not solve the problem. Policemen, you have no money to pay for the policemen, they go away and then they start cutting trees. Okay. But if you change the level of income, the life of the people, then they will stop cutting trees because they don't need cutting trees for living. So this is the strategy that you have to develop. You can try to solve the problem directly, but on the long term, it will not solve anything. So this is again something that is important to take in mind. You don't take the outputs, the products, as the entry point for imagining the future of your system. And the singular one, it means that if you want to change something here, then you have to focus on this one, especially because they are not influenced by anything. For example, very often, the role of women is here. It doesn't mean that it is not important. It just means that if you want to improve the status or the role of women, you have to help them directly. You cannot do that through the drivers, you cannot do that through the levers. You have to do something specific in order to improve their condition. So this is what this analysis helps us to do. So the driving forces that we are looking for, it's here. Those which are changing the direction of the system. Now, next one. This is what we are going to do. I'm not sure if we have time to do it right now. Maybe it will be a bit short, but I will show you the results first. Okay, so the graph here, we have done the graph, it's completed, and we will see it. You will have access to it. So what we do is, in order to imagine create scenarios for the future of labor in the rubber system, we will use some driving forces that are here in the drivers. Sometimes it may happen that you can take some of the levers because they are very influenced, okay? But usually you take the levers that are very close to the left because they are influenced but not so much. So this is where we have to focus. Yes, sir.
Maybe we can know that we cannot change the drivers and focus on the lever.
Well, those are internal factors that have been defined as.
Yes, but they can be internal and we cannot change them.
No?
No, by definition.
No, by definition, you change.
Internal is the one who can change. That the actor of the system can change.
By definition.
By definition. Actors of the system.
So.
Or it can be a car not able to change.
So it's not an internal factor.
So if you cannot, they are not internal factors. By definition.
This is why at the beginning I said we separate internal and external factors, because the external factors exist and we will work on the external factor, but the external factors are those you cannot control. So here, this is what we call your room for maneuver. This is the space that you can manage by definition so So all the factors of change that have been written in this list have been written here because the actors of the rubber system can control or influence it significantly. That's by definition. Okay. But it's good to ask the question again because that reminds us that the difference between internal and external. Okay. Now, this is not a rule. This is based on experience. We usually we always take between 4 and 8 driving forces. If we take less than 4, just sorting out and taking just 3 of the 34, one will ask, why did we spend two days, almost 2 days, discussing this if it's only a matter of selecting 2 or 3 of them? Okay? And if we take if we take only 2 or 3 of them, when we will start imagine the future or explore the future, it will be a very poor future because it will be based on the condition on the combination of only 2 or 3 factors. Now, if we take more than 8, we've done that at a certain time. It's extremely complex to do the work. So it's just a rule of based on the experience. Usually, we advise people to take 5 to 6. And with 5 to 6 factors of driving forces, we already have a good start for developing scenarios. Okay, you want to see the results?
Yes.
True.
Huh? Okay. So the matrix is here, it's full. So you go to the graph. The variable direct strength graph. No, yeah, this one. Okay. So this is the graph.
2, 4, 5, on a 6, 7.
No. There is something. There is something. Here, this is a graph by default. This is a graph by default, which is limited to 2 here and 2 and 2 here. You have to change to go down and change the definition of the axis here. To make sure here you click here on the right. Okay, click right.
On the number. Click on the
On the
number.
number.
Okay, mise en forme de l'axe. Okay, and here it says maximum 2, so you click here. No, not here. Here.
Automatique. Redéfinir.
Here.
Ok, automatique.
Non.
No, here. Là, j'ai le doigt là. Maximum and redefine. Okay, so now it takes into consideration the highest value. Okay. Now, if someone is skilled in computer, blah blah blah, I'm okay for having a graph that displays automatically the automatic things. But okay. So you do the same for this one here, the horizontal graph. Yeah. Same thing here. Okay, mise en forme de l'axe. And again, okay. And now you move the lines to 1. Okay. Yeah. And this one. Okay. Why we move it to 1? Because the results that we display here, it's ponderated. It's centered on 1. 1 is the average influence and the average dependence of each factor, which it is based on the fact that when you take all the influences of all factors, there is a number. I think it's 117 or something, or 130, and the total number of influence is 1,190. So we divide the total number of influence by the number of interaction, and all the factors which have this number are here. And if a factor has a number that is higher, this means here, for example, that this factor is twice more influence than the average. Okay? But there is, can you go back?
Upstairs, super.
Here,
That's
this one is more than 3 times
10.
more influence than the average. And this one is the type of holdings.
Super driver.
just to make sure, so then your average value change with in every situation and
every
c'est adapté to our work. The average value is what? It's a calculation from the result.
Yeah. It's a calculation. It's based on what? It's based on the final results. It's based on all what you have done and yeah, exactly. Okay. So here, this one, for example, which is cap. What is this?
13.
C'est quoi celui-là? It's a.
C'est où t'as contrôlé?
Oui,
Ça influence tout.
Non, parce qu'il y en a deux, ils sont ici, il y en a deux.
Ça influence tout. J'étais pas là, ça faut me dire.
So here,
Peut-être, oui.
the labor demand and tapping contract, labor demand and tapping contract are almost 2.5 times more dependent than the others. It makes sense because the tapping contract is the result of many interactions. The labor demand is also the result of many interactions. So what we need to do is to look at the results and ask ourselves, does it make sense? Is it logical to have those things here? Is it logical to have those things here? Is it logical to have those things here? Decision making? Who manages the that's what it, who managed the plantation? That's the decision making. Can you read the decision making for me?
Who takes decisions?
Who takes decision?
Does
Does it make sense for you that who takes decision in rubber plantation is a very influent factor on labor? Does it make sense?
Yes, of course. Yes.
You say no, and then people say yes, of course, because they are deciding the type of contract, etc., etc. So this is why it is high, but it's also influenced by some others. So.
How is labor very
Okay, labor supply.
labor supply?
The downstream chain, the political capacity, the productive status, but here we are already getting low in terms of influence. It's close to the average, right? Okay, so this is, okay, now go down. You have it on your computer now.
No,
You did-
I have.
okay, sorry. Okay, here there are a couple of,
Many,
yeah, there are many of them, yeah.
Similar.
Yeah, which
What
means
are the products?
Hmm?
The products?
the products are here.
Yeah, the most.
Here, this is
Rubber, attractivity.
yeah,
Pour le toile.
the attractivity,
Ah,
yeah, rubber attractivity.
Sounds logical.
Hmm? It's not
Oui,
logical?
oui.
Yes, it's logical.
It's a product.
Yeah, it's a product. So those are the things that tells us that the results are quite robust, because if we had seen, for example, something that according to us absolutely no importance and it was here, we say, okay, what have we done?
So meaning that we didn't need to do this work because it's all logical, so we can.
Well,
No.
The thing is that once we've done that and we've checked it, then we will decide which are the driving forces that we will take to start working on the future of rubber, exploring different futures. Now, this is the direct. Okay. So now you can see the graph. Okay. The shape of the graph is like this, which means that this system is rather stable. If we had a lot of leverage here, that would make it very difficult to figure out what are the drivers. Here we have a couple of drivers that we can take for the further length. But this is the direct strength graph. I told you that there is also this software will help us also to compute, to integrate the indirect relationships. You have to trust me, but after that you can check it, because we won't spend time on this. You have to trust me that indirect relationships, when you have a table like the one that we have, if we multiply this table by itself, it's called a matricial multiplication, the resulting table represents the indirect relationship between all the variables. There is a mathematical demonstration of that. You can find it on the web, you can find it on documents. I didn't do it, but my colleagues, who was a graph engineer, he did it like this and said, oh, let's do a matricial computation and you see we have the indirect influence. I said, okay, and it works. So we have another matrix, which is the indirect. So you go to variables total influence here. And here, this is the matrix of indirect influences that results from this matricial calculation. So from this one, we had a graph. We had a direct influence graph and we have an indirect influence graph. So the indirect influence graph is here. So again, we need to transform it because it's 2 by 2. And while Raphael is doing it, I will explain you the interest of the indirect influence graph. Somehow, it introduces a little bit of time, a sense of time, a sense of time, because indirect influences go through direct influences first, and then other influences. So it means that it will take a little bit more time for the indirect influences to happen. Okay, when we say, for example, the level of influence, but the political capacity and the level of influence of the actors of the rubber system has an indirect influence on the planted areas. We said it's indirect because it goes through the policy, and then the policy will go through the production system, and then the production system will go to the planted area. So you see the time for this indirect influence to manifest, to happen, is probably, it takes a bit more time. So the indirect influence helps us to identify what kind of factors of change could later become driving forces, or could later become leverage, or could later become outputs. So if there is no difference between the direct and an indirect, then it's okay, we take the driving forces from the direct. If we see that some factors are moving from the indirect to in the indirect graph and becoming more driving forces, then we have to take that into consideration in the selection of the driving forces, because we don't want just to use what is acting in the present, we want also to use what is also acting in the future. Okay, so here what we see, that's the indirect now. Okay. For example, this one, the national investment has moved from here to there. National investment was here before, and now it's there. So it's getting closer to becoming a driving force. So it means that probably national investment, as it is defined here, should be included in one of our driving forces.
Indirect?
Yeah. Indirect. Labor supply is here. The political capacity is here. Go back. Labor supply is here. The downstream chain. Look at in the direct one. The downstream is getting a bit lower now. So this is how we will make a decision. So it's time for lunch. So we will break now, and we will start at 1:30. We will decide what kind of driving forces we will take. Okay? Sorry.
I don't know other participants, but I don't understand right now. So I suggest you to explain me again.
Okay. Yeah.
From other for like sexual something like that. So
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know other participants.
Okay. No problem. No, you are here to learn, so there's no problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe easy if we have this.
Yeah. We will send it to you, and then after that.
And I think what can help you, maybe you can take an example of one factor. What is the result in the table?
Yeah.
And how you report it in the.
Yes, the calculation.
A lot of
They want to know why.
I think
result.
from the table to that, it's too quick for them to do so.
Oh, you don't. Okay, no problem. With the computer, with the file on your computer, you will see it very easily. So let's send it to you.
Yeah.
I was polite, so everybody talked before me. Good. So, okay, now this output is from different countries, so with different context.
Yeah.
So I think we can use that only as an exercise.
Absolutely. Yeah. We are not going to say anything more than this is the output of a workshop where people from different countries have worked together. I'm absolutely right. That's the idea. If we have this, the purpose was to do this at a regional level, having people from different countries, what is the dynamics, the general dynamics of rubber, of labor systems in Southeast Asia, then this type of result would have been more useful, but adapted. Okay, so let's see again in 1:30.